The house was quiet, too quiet. Not the kind of peace Emily hoped for when she moved back into her late husband's country home, just silence that reminded her what she'd lost. Kane padded beside her as she carried a box into the living room. His nails clicked gently against the hardwood floors. He didn't bark, didn't whine, just watched. He always watched. Emily set the box down with a sigh. You don't have to follow me everywhere, you know. Kane didn't move. His ears twitched, eyes locked on her like he was still on patrol. He was once a decorated K-9 unit. Her husband Jason had told her stories, how Kane sniffed out bombs in war zones, dragged wounded soldiers to safety, and never failed a mission. When Jason died in that last deployment, Kane was returned to base. And now, months later, Emily had taken him in. Because he was all she had left. Guess we're both trying to figure this out, huh? She whispered. That night, as she lay in bed, she heard him pacing the hallway. Slow steps. Stop. Then another step. Stop. It kept going. Over and over. She opened the door. Kane. He stood there, head tilted, tail still. When she stepped toward the nursery, he stepped in front of her. Emily frowned. It's just a baby's room. He didn't move. With a sigh, she pushed past him, walked in, and turned on the light. Nothing strange. Just the crib, the rocking chair, soft toys still in boxes. But Kane stayed at the doorway, watching. Every time she left a room, he entered it right after. Every time she came back in, he'd already be waiting. She tried to laugh it off. You act like someone's going to break in. But he didn't wag his tail. Didn't make a sound. Just stared at the window for a long time before settling at her feet. During the day, he was gentle. Careful not to jump or bark too loudly. He stayed near her belly, resting his head close like he was guarding the baby before it was even born. But once the sun went down, he turned into something else, restless, alert. She'd find him sniffing the back door, pawing lightly at the attic stairs, his ears always perked. One evening, she tried to relax with tea and a book. Kane sat by the window. Come sit, she said. He didn't budge. You make me nervous. Still nothing. Fine. Be weird. She turned the page. Then he growled. Low. Quiet. A sound she hadn't heard before. She looked up. What is it? He stood stiff, staring into the dark yard. Emily moved to the window, squinting into the night. Nothing but trees and fog. Kane, stop, she said, placing a hand on his back. But he stayed there, muscles tight. For a second, she wondered, was he just stuck in the past? Was he still trying to protect Jason? The next day, she called the vet. He's healthy, the vet said. No signs of stress. Just alert. Some dogs, especially ones like him, don't stop working. Not even in retirement. Emily hung up and stared at Kane. You're still on duty, huh? That night, she couldn't sleep. Kane sat beside the nursery door again. Same as always. She watched from her bedroom. Something about the way he was sitting, rigid, focused, made her uneasy. She whispered, "What do you know that I don't?" Kane didn't turn. Emily lay back, one hand over her stomach, the other resting on the bed beside her. She tried to tell herself it was just an old habit. A soldier's dog stuck in soldier mode. But deep down, something told her, Kane wasn't just remembering the war. He was sensing something. Something she couldn't see. And in the silence of that long night, with the wind tapping against the window, Emily finally began to understand. This dog wasn't just her protector. He was her warning. The drawer was open again. Emily stared at it from across the hall, her eyebrows pulled together. She was sure she'd closed it last night. She walked over, pushed it shut, and stood there for a second, hand resting on the wood. Behind her, Kane's paws tapped against the floor. He didn't bark, just watched. Getting forgetful already, she muttered, forcing a smile. Pregnancy brain. But Kane didn't blink. That evening, she went to lock the back door, and froze. It was already unlocked. She could have sworn she'd locked it earlier. The wind was sharp tonight, sneaking through the gap and brushing her skin like cold fingers. She closed it quickly and turned the deadbolt hard. Kane stood behind her, body tense, ears forward. You too, she whispered. He walked over, sniffed the bottom of the door, then let out a deep growl, not loud, but enough to twist something in her stomach. Emily turned away. It's just the wind. But Kane didn't move. The next morning, she stepped out onto the porch and stopped. Muddy footprints. Large ones. Not hers. Not Kane's. Her breath caught. She bent down, touched one. Fresh. Maybe it's the mail guy, she told herself. Or a neighbor. But no mail was left. And the closest neighbor lived half a mile away. Kane sniffed the steps, nose twitching, then looked out toward the woods. He growled low. Raccoons, maybe? She asked, unsure. But she already knew Kane didn't growl at raccoons. That night, she left the lights on. All of them. She made tea, tried to read, but her eyes kept shifting to Kane. He was staring down the hallway again. Same spot. Same shadow. What do you see? She asked. He didn't turn his head. Just stared. Then came the sound. A faint thud. Like something soft hitting wood. Emily stood up fast. Her mug rattled on the table. She walked slowly to the hallway. The drawer. Wide open again. Her chest tightened. She hadn't touched it. Kane was already moving, body low to the floor, growl rumbling deep in his throat. Emily reached for the drawer and slammed it shut. She backed away. Old houses creak. Wood swells. It's nothing, she whispered, mostly to herself. But the next morning, something new waited for her. The back door was scratched. Not a little. Deep gouges in the frame. She stood frozen. Her fingers brushed over the marks. Kane, she called. He came beside her, sniffed the frame, then growled. Long. Low. Emily took a shaky breath. Animals, right? Just animals. But Kane kept growling. That night, she moved the crib into her room. She tried to sleep, but her heart wouldn't slow. Kane lay beside the bed, eyes wide open, watching the door. Around 2 a.m., she woke. She didn't know why. No noise. No lights. Just a feeling. She sat up, and Kane was already standing, ears pointed at the hallway. Emily walked quietly toward the nursery. Kane followed close, body tense. When she reached the door, she paused. The handle moved. Just slightly. Kane growled. Emily stepped back fast, hand over her mouth. She grabbed her phone, heart pounding. No one was supposed to be here. No one but her and Kane. She called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Kane stood between her and the door like a shield. She turned and backed toward her bedroom, Kane never leaving her side. Back in bed, she whispered, "Are you protecting us from something?" Kane didn't answer. But the way he stayed pressed against the door, eyes locked on the dark hallway, said enough. Emily curled around her baby bump and tried to breathe. Somewhere out there, something was moving. And Kane. Kane was the only one who knew it. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the baby monitor. Emily squinted at the screen, just static and shadows, the faint shape of the crib barely visible. But something felt wrong. Her chest was tight, her breath shallow. The digital clock on her nightstand read 2:14 a.m. She slipped out of bed and tiptoed into the hallway. Kane was already there, sitting still, ears forward. His body blocked the path like a stone wall. "Kane," she whispered. "Let me check on her." He didn't move. She took a slow step forward. That's when the growl came, low, steady. Not angry. Just warning. Emily frowned. "She's probably just stirring. I need to check." She stepped again, and Kane snapped gently at the air in front of her. His teeth didn't touch her, but it was clear. "No." "Kane," she said again, softer now, "what is it?" Then she heard it. A faint creak from inside the nursery. She froze. Another sound followed, a slow inhale. But it didn't come from her daughter. It was heavier. Older. Adult. Her stomach dropped. She stepped back, hand flying to her mouth. Oh God. Kane was locked in position, eyes never leaving the door. Emily reached for her phone, gone. She'd left it charging in the bedroom. She turned and started to move, but Kane stayed behind, still guarding. Back in her room, she grabbed the phone, hands shaking. She dialed 911. "Yes, my name is Emily Dawson. I think someone's in my house. In my baby's room." The dispatcher's voice was calm. "Is the door locked? Are you safe? My dog won't let me in. He's guarding the door. Stay where you are. Officers are on the way." She ran back into the hallway, Kane still at the door. "Police are coming," she whispered. "Just hold on." Inside the nursery, the breathing continued. Creak. Then silence. Emily leaned against the wall, legs shaking. She stared at Kane. "You knew, didn't you? You knew something was wrong." Kane didn't blink. Minutes crawled by like hours. Red and blue lights flashed through the front windows. A knock. "Police." Emily ran to unlock the door. 2 officers stepped inside, guns drawn, moving fast. "Kane won't let us in the nursery," she said. "Something's in there." The officers nodded. "Stay back." One of them stepped forward. "Let's go, boy." Kane glanced at Emily once, then stepped aside. The door creaked open. Flashlights cut through the dark. And then, hands. "Don't move." A shout, then a crash. Emily pressed her hands to her ears, her eyes wide. Moments later, an officer stepped out, holding a man in handcuffs. Scruffy, dirty, face pale under the flashlight. "He was inside the closet," the officer said. "Had a knife on him." Emily's knees gave out. She collapsed to the floor. "The baby," she choked out. "She's safe." "Asleep," the other officer said. "Thanks to your dog." Emily looked at Kane. He walked over and sat beside her. Quiet. Calm. His eyes met hers. "You saved her," she whispered, pulling him close. "You saved her." The officer added, "He wasn't just squatting. He'd been watching you. Waiting." Emily couldn't breathe. She held Kane tighter. The officer placed a hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, your dog just saved both your lives." Kane rested his head on her lap. And Emily understood, this wasn't just instinct. This was loyalty. This was love. This was Kane still doing what he was trained to do, even if the war had followed him home. Emily backed away from the nursery, her phone shaking in her hand. Kane didn't wait. He lunged forward, muscles tense, teeth bared, and crashed through the door with a bark that shattered the silence. A scream tore from inside the room. Not hers. A man's. Then, nothing. Just the whimper of the baby. And Kane's low growl. Emily stood frozen in the hallway, her whole body trembling. Her hand hovered over the call screen. She hit redial. 911, what's your emergency? He's in the nursery, she whispered. My dog, he's in there with him. Stay calm, officers are minutes away. Do not enter the room. Emily pressed her back against the wall and slid down to the floor. Her ears strained for every sound. The baby cried again, louder now. Then Kane barked once, sharply, followed by a soft thud. Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks. Please, she whispered. Please let her be okay. 2 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through the front windows. Doors slammed. Boots hit the porch hard. She stood, opened the front door with trembling fingers. In there, she cried. The nursery. The officers raced past her, guns drawn. Kane stood inside the room, growling low over a man pinned against the floor. His arm was bleeding where Kane had bitten him, but he wasn't fighting anymore. He just lay there, eyes wild, chest heaving. The baby was still in the crib, untouched. One officer cuffed the man while another pulled Kane back gently. Easy, boy. You did good. Emily ran to the crib. Her daughter stared up at her, tears on her cheeks but unharmed. She scooped her into her arms, sobbing. I've got you, baby. Mama's here. An officer approached. Ma'am, he was hiding in your crawlspace. Blankets, food wrappers, a flashlight. He'd been living down there for days. Emily clutched her baby tighter. Why? He wouldn't say. But he had a knife in his coat. Rope too. Looked like he was waiting for the right moment. She sat down on the floor again, rocking her child, unable to speak. If your dog hadn't stopped you, the officer said softly, you and the baby would be gone. Kane walked over, slow and quiet now. His fur was matted with dust, but his eyes were calm. He laid his head on Emily's lap, and she finally broke. Tears streamed down her face as she reached to stroke him. You knew, she sobbed. You always knew. The police led the man out in handcuffs. He didn't speak. Didn't fight. One officer lingered. Your dog, he's trained, isn't he? Emily nodded. Retired K9. My husband's partner. Well, the officer said, kneeling to pat Kane's back gently. He just saved 3 lives tonight. After they left, the house felt hollow. The baby slept in Emily's arms, and Kane curled up beside the rocking chair. The adrenaline had worn off. Now, there was only the quiet. Only the truth. Someone had watched her. Waited. And Kane had been the only one who knew. She looked down at him. "I didn't listen," she whispered. "I thought I was just scared. But you were trying to tell me." Kane looked up once, blinked, then rested his head again. Outside, the wind had died. No creaks. No scratches. Just stillness. Emily stood and walked to the window, the baby tucked safe against her chest. The yard was empty. The porch was clean. The shadows were just shadows now. Behind her, Kane shifted his weight, tail thumping once against the floor. They were safe. For now. But something in Emily had changed. She would never ignore a warning again. Not from Kane. Not from the dog who had saved her life without a single word. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same. Not after what had happened. Emily sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Kane lay on the floor beside her, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed. There was a knock on the door. She opened it slowly to find Detective Harris standing there, coat damp from the morning rain. "Can I come in?" he asked gently. She nodded and stepped aside. He didn't sit. Just pulled a file from under his arm. "We identified the man," he said. "His name's Richard Holloway. Former military. Dishonorably discharged 3 years ago." Emily's eyes widened. "Military." Harris nodded. "Same base as your husband." She felt the air leave her lungs. Did they know each other? Not closely. But Holloway had some kind of grudge. After your husband's funeral, he disappeared from his last known address. We believe he started following you shortly after. Emily's hand trembled. She looked down at Kane. "He was in the crawlspace for days," Harris continued. "Maybe longer. No one knows exactly when he got in." She whispered. Kane knew. The detective followed her gaze. "It's rare, what your dog did. Most dogs would have barked. Maybe growled. But this, he tracked, protected, and waited until the right moment. That's training." Emily said nothing. Her throat was too tight. Before Harris left, he paused at the door. "He's not just a pet," he said softly. "He's a soldier. Still serving." That night, Emily sat beside Kane on the floor of the nursery. The baby slept peacefully in the crib nearby, a small blanket rising and falling with every tiny breath. Kane didn't sleep. He just lay there, eyes open, watching. "Why didn't you rest?" Emily whispered. "All those nights, pacing, guarding. I thought you were just stuck in the past." Kane turned his head slightly, as if he understood. "You were trying to tell me," she said, voice shaking. "But I didn't listen." She reached out and ran her fingers gently through his fur. It was coarse in some places, soft in others. "I'm so sorry." Kane blinked slowly. "You knew before I did. Before anyone did. You were never just guarding the house. You were guarding me. Her. This whole time." Tears filled her eyes, but she let them fall. "You stayed awake so I could sleep," she said. "Even when no one believed there was danger." The baby stirred in the crib, whimpered once, then fell quiet again. Emily leaned back against the wall. "Jason would have thanked you," she whispered. "He would have known. Maybe he sent you to me." Kane laid his head on her lap. She stroked his ears gently, and for the first time since it all happened, she felt safe again. "I should have trusted your instincts sooner." Outside, the wind was soft now, not cruel. The shadows no longer scared her. Emily stayed with him until the sun began to rise, casting light through the nursery window. As the first golden ray hit the crib, the baby woke and gave a soft little cry. Kane stood and walked over, sniffing gently, tail swaying once. Emily smiled through her tears. "You're still watching over her, aren't you?" Kane looked back at her, and for a moment, she swore there was something deeper in his eyes. Something human. And she realized then. He hadn't just survived the war. He'd brought home a part of it. And he chose to keep fighting, because that's what heroes do. The seasons changed, but Kane's watch never did. Even after the break-in. Even after the man was arrested. Even after Emily cried into his fur night after night, Kane remained the same. Focused. Still. silent unless he had something to say. Emily gave birth on a quiet morning in early spring. The hospital was bright, the nurses kind, and Kane stayed with a neighbor until she returned home with the baby. She named her Lily. Kane sniffed her gently when they arrived. One soft whimper from the newborn, and he lowered his head beside her crib, ears alert. From that day on, he never left her side. Emily would sometimes wake in the middle of the night to find Kane already by the crib, watching Lily breathe. He didn't sleep much. Not deeply. Just rested enough to stay sharp. Friends came and went. Neighbors offered to help. But the one constant in their little world was Kane. Every time someone new visited the house, Kane stood between them and Lily until Emily gave a nod. "I think he's stricter than me," she laughed once. But no one minded. As Lily grew, she'd reach through the crib bars and tug at Kane's ear. He never flinched. Just looked back at Emily as if to say, "I've had worse." When Lily started crawling, Kane followed. Always close, always calm. At 7 months, she said her first word. "Not mama. Not dada. K." Emily cried. By the time Lily turned 1, the house had changed. Not in furniture or walls, but in feeling. It was no longer haunted by shadows or fear. It was warm, full of laughter, full of healing. But Kane still checked the locks at night. Still stood at the window when the wind got too loud. Old habits. Emily didn't stop him anymore. On Lily's first birthday, the house filled with balloons, cake, and a few close friends. Kane sat in the corner, calm, watching. He didn't bark when the guests arrived. But when one man stepped too close to Lily with a balloon, Kane stood. Emily smiled. "He's fine," she said, patting Kane's head. "He's just on duty." After everyone left, Emily cleaned up while Lily napped. She opened the small box from the shelf, Jason's things. And Kane's. Inside was Kane's old service badge. Worn, a little scratched, still shining. Emily walked to the crib and sat on the floor beside it. Kane followed, settling next to her. "She'll grow up knowing," Emily whispered, holding the badge in her palm. "She'll know who kept her safe before she even knew what danger was." Kane nudged her hand with his nose. "You don't need a uniform to be a hero," she said, brushing the badge gently. "You never did." Lily stirred in her sleep, tiny fingers twitching. Kane stood, walked to the crib, and lay down beside it. Emily stayed beside him, tears in her eyes. Some heroes don't need medals. Some don't need parades. Some come home from war with scars we can't see and find new battles to fight, like keeping a baby girl safe in a quiet country home. Emily placed the badge on the dresser, next to a photo of Jason and Kane from their time overseas. "Your partner would be proud," she whispered. Kane didn't move, but she knew he heard her. And as night fell and the stars appeared, Kane remained where he'd always been, right where he was needed most. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more emotional tales that remind us of the quiet heroes among us. Have you ever known an animal who changed your life? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And wherever you're watching from tonight, remember, some angels don't have wings. They have fur and 4 paws.